Look what they're offering us now. Their answer is, okay, we've removed God from the equation, and what do we get? We get government. There's a reason why right now the idea of socialism is suddenly popping up in America, which is genuinely the worst set of collectivist ideas that you could possibly ever have, that hundreds of millions of people have died in history under. And it's popping up because if you listen to what's happening on the left right now, politically, because they've outsourced God. Imagine if one of those people on stage said that they were a real believer. Imagine if any of them, maybe Biden could do it. But really the rest of them can't. They would never really say that they're a believer. Now, I don't know what they are, and I wouldn't want them to say anything that's not true to themselves. But they would be mocked by everything mainstream. Everything mainstream would mock them. The way that everything mainstream mocks any Christian that happens, because they're usually on the right, they happen to be conservatives. But look what they're offering us now. Their answer is, okay, we've removed God from the equation, and what do we get? We get government. And they now pray basically to government. They think that they can figure out somehow by sitting in a room with a bunch of other politicians and bureaucrats, the worst sort of people that exist, I didn't even mean that to be funny, but actually, but that's what they think. They think that they can rejigger all of humanity in a way that will be so much better than everything that came before them. And not only can't they are going to do the complete reverse. So that, if for no other reason, if for no grand revelation or something like that, that would be a reason to be respectful of people that are believers. Because they can fight that in a way that secularists can't. The good liberals don't have enough juice. In and of themselves, they don't have enough juice to fight that. That's why liberalism has collapsed in the name of progressivism.
Yeah. I approach this in two ways. The first one is your comment that secularism is collapsing. And one can analyze the defects in atheism and where it leads to and the millions of people that died in the last century. But coming over to the other side, what you're saying, Justin, you see, I am a scientist. And one of the fascinating things is that science is a direct legacy of the Judeo-Christian tradition. You were saying we're all scientists now and all this is, no, it is not. And let's start absolutely basic. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Hebrew Bible, written millennia ago, knew there was a beginning. It was in the early 60s before scientists caught up with that. And the Bible was right. And Dawkins said, well, there was a 50-50 chance when I debated him. And I said, at least the Bible got it right. But more seriously than that, you see, the fact that I'm a mathematician and interested in science, now just think about that. The fact that mathematics can describe what goes on in the universe is a matter of huge wonder. Einstein once said the only incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible. And he saw the problem. Why does it work? Well, it's not an incomprehensible thing if you start from the idea that there's an intelligent God who made us in his image, and therefore we can do science. And that's exactly what the early pioneers of modern science, starting with Galileo and Kepler and Newton and so on and so forth, they were all believers in God. And therefore, when I hear that kind of question, I'm not remotely ashamed of being a scientist and a Christian, because I want to argue that it was Christianity gave me my subject. And C.S. Lewis put it brilliantly. I'm glad you understood it in the end. C.S. Lewis said, men became scientific because they expected law in nature, and they expected law in nature because they believed in the lawgiver. And I think we're getting to the stage now where serious atheist thinkers are beginning to re-examine the kind of naturalism that reduces everything to physics and chemistry. And one of them lives in New York. His name is Thomas Nagel. And he's a brilliant philosopher. And he says something's going wrong because if everything is reducible to physics and chemistry, then so is your mind. But then why would you trust your mind? In other words, atheism, taken to its logical conclusion, undermines the very rationality you need to trust to do science. And I'm not in for accepting a worldview that undermines the foundations of any kind of argument or discussion whatsoever. So I think that in the 21st century, we can push back on that very naive notion that God's out, we do science now. No. Science actually brings God back in.
It's very interesting. I mean, all of this leads me to want to ask you at this point, Dave. You're sitting down with John here tonight, obviously a Christian believer, someone who gives evidences for God. And I know that on your show you've had people like Bishop Barron and I think Ravi Zacharias is going to be featured shortly. Where does this leave you on, if you like, that God question? Because at one level I can absolutely see the way in which there's a kind of a utility and a kind of sense in which meaning, we can gather meaning from doing the religious things, the rituals and so on. But at the end of the day, and I asked this of Jordan Peterson once, and it was an interesting answer. Do you believe in God? Do you feel like that's where you've got to at this point in your life?
You know, it's funny, when we would do the Q&As at the shows with Jordan, for the first few, we would let people come up to the microphone, and what usually happens is that people start telling their life story, and they would want to get a therapy session in front of 3,000 strangers, and it started getting very weird. So we decided a better way. We used an app to do it, and when Jordan was on stage, basically, I would go through the best ones, and I'd find some funny ones and some serious ones and everything else. But what always came up, no matter how many times Jordan answered it, was, do you believe in God? And he, as I'm sure he said to you, he finds it to be sort of the most annoying question possible. So I think I would answer it. I mean, I would answer it in a similar way that Jordan would. That, look, I think I've sort of laid out a set of beliefs here that show the utility of believing in something outside of myself, and I do believe in that. So if you want to call that God, that there is something outside of me, there is something that is connecting all of us that has nothing to do with the material world. There is something that drives us, that is the driver of humanity, that is something good. I believe that. I believe that.
Thank you. But could you put a name on that, something, at this point? I told you I wanted to label you before the end of the evening. So.
Jesus?
I guess, I mean, in a sense, I hear what you're saying.
Do I get a cookie at least? I mean, come on, people, what are we doing here?
I guess it's kind of like, what are the particulars though? What would that look like? How is that going to make a difference, I suppose, in your life? Is there a sort of sense in which you feel now any new obligations, given this kind of new sense that there is something beyond yourself?
You know, I think we're all sort of wired differently, right? I think some people can really flourish just sort of on their own set of ideas that they create in the world, and I think that can really work for some people. I think some people need some order outside of that. Some people need more of a community. Some people are real loners, all of those things. I think perhaps, but I truly mean what I said before. I'd be happy to do this every year with you and continue these conversations, and I'll continue them on my show, obviously. I think for me, the adventure of discussing this and seeing what kind of people that I bring into my studio, that I interact with at events like this, what type of people I want to be around, that really is the proof. That is what, that's what makes this, right? That's what makes this. So I don't know, so I get what I get the question. I respect the question, truly, and it's the question, right? I mean, it's like saying, what's the meaning of life, right? It's the big one. I would say I'm on the adventure to finding that out, and I'm really okay with that. You know, I hope that doesn't sound dismissive of the question or like I'm trying to evade it. I'm really not. I like and maybe this is just a function also of what I do for a living. I mean, I get to sit every week with people that in most cases are smarter than me, who have spent years working through all of these issues, as you have, John, and that is an incredible privilege that I have. So I would like to see how far I can take that.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about spirituality instead of nonstop yelling, check out our spirituality playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, check out our full episode playlist. They're all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.